closing the distance on an opponent. One of the trickiest things to do, and one thing that people always struggle with. They've got the technique, they know what they're doing, but every time they throw something, they're hitting thin air and they can't seem to get close enough to make it land. So today we're gonna go over 5 kickboxing combinations that cover some distance. And each one of these combos covers distance in a different way. So they've got a different technique or concept in order for breaching the gap between where you are and where you want to be, which is hitting your opponent. These take into consideration the fact, and this is what most people miss, is that people tend to move backwards when you try to hit them. When you practice things on bags and pads, the reality of it is that these are primarily or mostly static targets. So you train in a way where when you throw your punches or throw your kicks, the target is there. In sparring, the reality of it is you go to throw this punch or this kick and your opponent is probably going to back up. And when they back up, your techniques are going to hit thin air. So you need to train certain things with that in mind, start further away from the bag or the pad, and you have to bridge that gap. And the practicing of bridging that gap is what's going to help you translate that into hitting people with sparring. Now, before we get into the combinations, I'm going to quickly just address the keyboard warriors. You shouldn't feed the trolls, but I'm going to feed the trolls ever so slightly because I'm just in the mood to feed the trolls.
I was like, it's about to go down.
My technique in this video is not going to be perfect. You don't need to tell me that I drop my guard after I throw a cross. You don't need to tell me that I telegraph my kick when I throw my kick. I coach. I haven't competed for quite a long time, and I keep my technique at a level where I'm able to demonstrate, I'm able to get involved with my guys, but I am by no means perfect, and I've never claimed in order to be so. What I'm giving you today is some concepts and ideas that you can take away and work on. Some of it you'll like, some of it you won't. Take what's useful, leave what's not.
Mind your damn motherfucking business, bitch!
Feel free to keep your opinions to yourself. Let's get into it. Okay, we're gonna start nice and simple because that's a good place to start. And this is sliding in behind your jab. Well, like I said, if you just work the combo, jab, cross, hook, bat leg round, which is the combination we're using, you're gonna find that often your opponent isn't there to be hit. But if we start practicing sliding in on our one, we are preempting the idea that our opponent's gonna move back, and then we can hit them with the cross, with the hook, or at least with the bat leg kick. So this is just a solid, basic, fundamental combo. What you really wanna focus on is that ability of pushing off with your feet and driving your stance forward in behind the jab. I'm gonna talk about this a lot in this video, but the importance of going in behind a weapon. If you had a sword in one hand and a shield in the other, you want to make sure that at least one of those is going towards your opponent as you try to move forward. The shield would mean that moving forward with good solid defense. The sword would mean going in behind a technique, which is what we're doing here. So going in behind the jab, what you're doing is you're giving your opponent something to think about whilst you cover the distance. If you just try to slide forward, you're probably walking onto counters. If you go in behind the technique, you still obviously always have the risk of being countered, but at least they've got something to deal with. They've got to deal with that sword, otherwise they're going to eat that jab. And if they eat the jab, or even if they defend it, you know you found the range to hit them with the rest of the combination. The cross, the hook, and the bat leg round. This combination also just makes use of a real basic term, which is counter rotation. You throw the jab, it rotates you one way. You throw the cross, it rotates you other. You throw the hook, it rotates you the other. You throw the kick, it rotates you the other. So what you've got is a lot of torque, which allows you to generate a lot of power, which is why this combination is such a classic. Okay, combination number 2, very similar, but instead of coming in behind the punch, we're gonna come in behind the kick. We're gonna use a sliding front kick, or what people in Muay Thai might refer to as a teep. Lifting that lead leg up and then driving in through with the back foot to throw that kick. Now, your teep is probably longer than your jab, so this is a great long-range weapon for reaching out and striking into that opponent. Again, what we're not doing in this case is trying to cause damage with the teep. We're using it as a way of getting in closer. So we're throwing that kick to then land in our stance, hit our cross hook, nice, powerful, strong punches, and set up our kick. Now, in the example, I think I'm throwing a leg kick, but keep in mind, this could be adjusted. You could throw that up to the body, you could fling that up to the head, whatever you feel. Play with the levels. What I will say is with the teep, if you throw that teep into the body, you're gonna draw attention down, and that will open up the head for the hands, and then you can see from throwing the hands what they do defensively and where you think the opening might be. The reason I've done the leg kick is we then are attacking all three levels. The teep into the body, the punches to the head, the kick to the leg. Attack all three levels, we make it more complicated for our opponent to defend, we give them more to think about. Okay, number 3, we're gonna get a little bit more unorthodox and we're gonna use a blitzing motion to get in. Blitzing was kind of developed and made popular from things like point style karate, but it's seen a real kind of resurgence and convergence in things like MMA and kickboxing now because of its ability to cover distance quickly. It's an aggressive pushing forward motion with the hands, and there's a variety of different ways you can throw the blitz in terms of which punch combinations you can attach to it. So for our example here, we're blitzing in with a body jab, coming over the top with a cross. We're gonna pivot off the center line with our hook and then throw our roundhouse kick. Notice most of these combos are very similar in terms of cross hooks and back leg roundhouse kicks. The focus for today's video is on that entry, on how we're bridging the gap from where we're standing to where we wanna be. Now, the effectiveness of blitzing comes from your ability to commit to it. If you blitz half-heartedly or with kind of a sense of nervousness to you, you are going to leave yourself very exposed to counters. Things like check hooks work really well against blitzing. Blitzing works really well if you fully commit to it. Similar to if you're trying to land a double leg takedown, you need to really go for that in order to get in on the hips and take someone down with it. Same thing with a blitz. It needs a full level of commitment in terms of the speed, power, and dynamics in order for that to bridge that gap and get you into range. What happens with the blitz often is that you can get too close. If you really drive forward with it and commit to it, you can find that you're too close. And this is why I've incorporated that pivot hook, because that helps to rebuild or recreate a bit of space so we can then strike with the kick on the end. Blitzing in with the hands, pivoting off to create some space, to then catch them with the kick. Okay, number 4 is incorporating a stance switch. I will preface this one by saying you need to have some level of comfort fighting out of the opposite side stance. If you fight orthodox, you need to have a little bit of comfort working as a southpaw or vice versa. Now, I'm not saying you need to be proficient in both sides. I'm saying you're gonna need a few techniques because of what this is going to do. In this instance, we're gonna throw our back leg kick to start, but we're going to land it in front. So rather than throwing that kick and making it the back leg again, which isn't gonna change the distance from where we are, we're gonna throw that back leg and land it now as the lead foot. And you'll see in the example here what that does to the distance between me and the bag. It lands me much closer up into range. So then I can follow that through with my striking combos. Now, in this instance, I've worked it as a cross hook into a spinning back kick. The reason we've gone for that is the spinning back kick resets me back to my original stance. And this is what I was saying about you don't need full competence in that stance. You need a couple of techniques that you can use, and ideally ones that will eventually transition you back to your preferred side. So in this combination, I've thrown that back leg roundhouse. That switched me, in my instance, into an orthodox stance. I've thrown a cross hook off of the orthodox side, and then I've thrown a spinning back kick, which is used primarily, other than obviously to hit my opponent, but to get me back to my preferred southpaw stance. Switching stance on an opponent, it's a risky move, yes, but it's also really useful and really powerful in the sense that it can be very confusing for people. If they're used to seeing an orthodox opponent and suddenly for a moment they're a southpaw, everything gets thrown out the window in terms of defensive properties. The direction from where the punches come from where the kicks come from, it all changes when we go from a closed stance to an open or an open to a close. So having that ability to kind of dip in and out can really disorientate your opponent. And again, the focus of this video is on how do we close that distance. So if we can do two things in one, we've closed the distance by using that back leg kick, and we disorientate our opponent by switching stances, we're just adding to the layers of complexity in the fight, and we're making it more difficult for our opponent to defend. Another benefit of this one is by starting with a big, powerful kick like a back leg roundhouse, again, you're really forcing your opponent to think defensively, because if they don't take that kick seriously, they can end up eating it, and if they end up eating it, it might be lights out. So they either need to get their guard up in order to protect it, or they need to try to recreate space, but we are already preempting that by landing the kick in front. Number 5, for this last one, we're gonna utilize some fakes and some head movement. One of the big issues you're gonna face when you're trying to go forward on someone is that they're gonna pop out a counter, as simple as a jab. So if you just try to come in down that center line and your head is always on that center, then the likelihood is you're gonna meet some resistance in terms of a technique. And this is where people often struggle. So what we wanna start incorporating is ways of moving forward that take our head off of where people expect it to be. So here, we're faking high with the jab, but without covering much distance yet. And then we're gonna step in with a body jab. We're gonna lower our level down and dip in underneath what might be a counter jab or a counter cross coming in towards us. So the distance is being covered in 2 parts. One, by a little bit of a fake with that lead hand up to the head. But what that's also doing is trying to sell our opponent on our head being here. Then we're gonna dip our head, lower our head, and come in underneath to hit with the body jab. Now off of this, we're gonna throw a leg kick, and we're gonna come with a hook cross. Basic combination. We've used the hand to get in, we've hit him with a leg kick, and then we've come back upstairs with the hands. Again, notice how I'm attacking different levels of the body, adding to the complexity of the combination. I've faked high, I've hit to the body, I've come round to the leg, I've come back up, and I've hit to the head with the hands. The more I can get my opponent thinking, do I protect my body, or do I protect my head, or do I protect my legs, the more opportunity I have of breaking down their defense and being able to get in with my combinations. So there we have it, guys. 5 kickboxing combinations for covering the distance. Any of you that don't like it, please feel free to file your complaints right here. If you did enjoy the video, I'd appreciate it if you hit the like button, hit subscribe, and I will see you on the next one.